Good afternoon, everyone. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and kick things off. My name is Stephanie Bradley. I'm the Senior Manager of Workforce and Education at TPMA, and we have an exciting panel discussion lined up today as we continue to celebrate Workforce Development Month. Today's topic of discussion is overcoming workforce challenges, and it's going to be really more of a guide for small businesses. And as you all know, small businesses nationwide encounter distinct workforce challenges in today's competitive landscape. As a result, professionals in economic development, workforce, and business services are really dedicated to crafting practical talent solutions that are tailored to meet their specific needs. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our wonderful panel of workforce and small business leaders that we have here with us today. They'll be sharing some actionable insights and tactics with us. So I'm going to start with Roberta Rowland, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background as it relates to business services and our workforce development.
Well, sure. My name is Roberta Rowland, and I'm the Director of Business Services with Workforce Partnership in Kansas City. And we cover a Tri-County area there. I've been there for going on close to 7 years now. As it relates to servicing employers, small, large, medium, one-person shop. So we work with a wide variety of employers and assisting them with their recruiting efforts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roberta. Anthony?
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Trilizzi. I'm the president of an organization called Career Team, and we are a workforce development service provider. So we have operations in close to 15 states where we are working with local workforce boards. And the connection to small businesses is we have a whole business services division where we're selling job orders and recruitment services and informing them of all the different amazing things that the workforce system can do for small businesses.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And Emmanuel.
Hi, everyone. Emmanuel Davila. I serve as Director of Business Growth Services with the Southland Development Authority. We're a regional economic development agency covering the south suburbs of Chicagoland. And in my role, my team advises, connects, and educates entrepreneurs. We provide them with one-on-one confidential advising. We provide them with educational opportunities like cohort education, seminars, and we connect them to different resources, whether that's access to capital, consultants that can help them grow their business, and even some workforce initiatives.
Thank you all so much. And again, thank you all for agreeing to participate in the panel today. So you all are working with small businesses in some capacity. Roberta, you in Kansas, Manny, you in the greater Chicago region, and Anthony, just various states nationwide. I think we would all agree that workforce is really the backbone of any small business and playing a critical role in its day-to-day operations and long-term success. For our listeners that we have today that providing direct business services to small businesses, why should Talent Solution be at the forefront?
Honestly, it's expensive to hire. So if you can provide a talent solution that retains talent, that will save you time and money in the long run.
And then for me, I think as a small business, the ability to scale and expand is hindered greatly, right? If you're not taking care of those, the talent that you need to deliver that. And even as a small business, getting off the ground or, maintaining operations, or if you're like landing new things and expanding, very, very important to have a talent pipeline. So you can't do that with just being reactive to what your needs are. You have to be proactive in developing a pipeline, whether that's particular positions, particular skills, hard skills, credentials, things that as you advance in your organization that you're going to need. And I would say this, understanding and kind of to, time and money, like Roberta was saying, what resources that are available, because there are tons available, and workforce system being one of a lot of options. You'll be surprised if you slow down and do the research and really talk to who is servicing small businesses. There's way more resources and things that can be accessed, to make you successful.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as you know, small businesses face very unique workforce challenges depending on their industry. What are some of those specific challenges you are seeing in industries such as like retail, tech, hospitality, manufacturing, and how do you feel that COVID influenced those challenges?
Sure, Stephanie. Maybe I could kick us off with this one. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you to TPMA for doing this. This is great. Um, Something I've seen over the last couple of years is that um, in retail and in hospitality, there tends to be a lot of turnover, and trying to find ways that keep employees engaged in those settings can be difficult, and trying to create ways for helping them advance through their career with you can be difficult. Um, so thinking through retention can be a challenge. Like, how do I create an environment where my cooks want to stay with me, where my customer service manager wants to stay with me? What are some creative ways that I can offer something to them that makes them say, you know what, you can work anywhere else, but with me, you feel like you want to come here and do something good every day. In the manufacturing side, looking at skilled workers, right? That's a challenge. And then figuring out, how do I find that skilled workforce and how do I find that next generation? In the Southland of Chicago, we have a number of manufacturers, and many of them are run and owned by baby boomers, and figuring out, what's the next generation of manufacturers going to look like, right? Is it employee owned manufacturing facilities, or is it going to be an employee that's learned the business in and out and is going to go ahead and take that over? So figuring out that succession planning has been a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And then I think thinking through work-life balance in professional environments, right? You see Amazon going back to 5 days a week, and the pandemic made people realize, wait, we can be just as productive as at home as we can in the office. So figuring out, like, what is the special sauce for you if you do have the opportunity to have your employees work remote? Like, what does that look like? What is that remote culture? Maybe it's asynchronous, maybe it's not even remote, but what does that look like? I think that has been some of the challenges I've seen.
Well, also, I mean, when you talk about the impact of COVID with retail and hospitality, those two industries shut down completely. They sent their workers home. And those two industries have always pretty much historically seen their workforce as fly by night. There's always someone that's wanting to work in food service, there's always somebody that's wanting to work in hospitality. And at the same time, with manufacturing, those individuals during the COVID period who could retire retired. And so the manufacturing companies, although many of them were restricted on how many people they could have there, they never shut down. They continued to work. And so then that meant that they had to fill that pipeline very quickly. So for the first time in a long time, they turned to the talent that they have kind of been ignoring, and that's the retail talent and the hospitality talent, and they started hiring them. So they started poaching in on this kind of talent, right? They realized, hey, they're used to being on their feet. They're used to doing, activities that they're active all day. They understand that it's a very process oriented situation, and they can follow through. And so for the first time, they started poaching in on that talent pool. And so when the hospitality and the restaurants came back, they started to notice that their employees weren't coming back because they were already reemployed somewhere else, and oftentimes making more money because the manufacturers could pay them more. They had better benefits because the manufacturing companies had better benefits. And in so many ways now, these manufacturing companies are now starting to really target those resumes, um, for people on Indeed that are actually trying to apply for hospitality jobs. They'll directly try and recruit from those talent pools. And like Manny said, like they're trying to figure out how they're going to attract the younger worker. And oftentimes those retail and the hospitality jobs were their first job, right straight out of high school, right straight out of college, whatever they were doing. Oftentimes that's what kind of made ends meet in between whatever they were thinking would be their career. But the manufacturers are coming at them and saying this can be your career now, because most manufacturing jobs right now are extremely high tech. They're advanced manufacturing roles, and they are looking for people with skills and who are willing to learn and grow.
Absolutely.
And then just one thing I would add, I mean, we could do it in two ways: tech industry in general, but even like me as an employer, we have 300 plus staff. And the tech industry was ahead of this with hybrid work or work from home. But, I know a lot of people, colleagues, friends, that relatives that all were in the tech industry, but were not working from home. They had to go to the office 5 days a week. And this could apply across a lot of industries. The hybrid work environment, we're losing people for the same pay, but they get to work from home. And where, with my type of work, you likely need to serving people, you're serving the public, you have to be in person for most of that time. So how do we keep them? That's been a big challenge. And I think incentive programs, and a lot of this doesn't need to be, cost you. It doesn't need to be a budgeting. It doesn't need to be monetary, but coming up with different rewards, perks, trying your best to, create schedules that are going to be, with that work-life balance, like Emmanuel had said. I think that's super important. And, COVID-19 pandemic is really, I think, hurt that with your retention just in general, because there's a lot of moving around because the opportunities have changed and shifted. And if you're not going to be flexible with that, sometimes you can't. That's great and that's fine. But if you can, you should, because you're not going to be competitive in the market for the most part.
Absolutely. Thank you. So at TPMA, we hear from our clients often that finding skilled or reliable workers with the right hard and soft skills combination is a common workforce challenge for small businesses. So Anthony, I want to start with you on this one. Should service providers be helping small businesses build their talent pipeline?
Well, ultimately, I'll talk from my perspective as a workforce program that's, accessible. Anyone who's watching this, every state, every local area has a workforce board. You can access them, and there's a ton of services. I think for successful providers need to make sure that they're sharing, right? There needs to be an awareness campaign. There has to be outreach into the business community to make sure that they know what tax credits they can get. We have qualified pipeline, right? You have an emerging occupation. Well, maybe that's something the workforce board or Department of Labor can provide training for, and we can get credentials, and we're just giving you a pipeline of candidates that have that credential that you were looking for. Maybe you have some on-the-job training, right? We can get people, you get them placed into your work site, and then the workforce board can pay for that for 3 months, 6 months, right? Pay for that customer while you're training them and getting them upskilled to keep them for a longer term to do different things. Super important. I think that's a lot of it. Recruitment services, utilizing space, having job fairs, all of that. Advertising and getting awareness to the community will definitely help. And there's tons of employers, large and small, that engage with the workforce system. But a lot of times, even though there's a ton of advertisement and a ton of outreach, and people like myself and Roberta, right, at workforce boards that are tasked with doing this, you always hear like, oh, I didn't know you all existed. I didn't know this resource was here. And so I thank TPMA for doing something like this for awareness to help small businesses, because in the long run, we want the engagement. We want to get people, served and helped and trained and placed. And this connection is a good way to do that.
So thinking about what Anthony just kind of responded with, Roberta, what partnerships do you feel like are really needed between the small businesses and the public workforce system to help find those qualified candidates?
Well, a lot of times when I'm working with a small company, I will directly ask them, let me see your job description, let me see your job posting. And when I comb through it and I read through it, then I say, let's talk about your internal barriers. A lot of times employers write in internal barriers into their job posting that makes it almost impossible for some individuals to apply. So when we have that deeper conversation about, do they really need to have a college degree to be a janitor? Do they really need 5 years of experience to do sales? And so we start having more of the conversation about what are the skills that you need and what are the soft skills that you need. And oftentimes I find that they say there's a lack of skills, but with small employers, they just haven't identified the skills that they actually need. They have a idea, but they haven't formulated it on paper or put it there. And so oftentimes, we'll talk about, well, it doesn't need to be 7 to 3. Can you be flexible and do a 9 to 2 so that you could consider a work from home parent or a parent with a child in school? What is that internal barrier looking like that's really preventing you from finding the talent? Because there's a lot of talent out there. Yes, the talent pool is shrinking, but oftentimes employers have placed internal barriers within their job descriptions that limit the number of people that can apply. So once you remove those barriers, it increases their pipeline, and then they can find the talent that they're truly looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roberta. And Manny, same for you, thinking about your engagement with the small businesses. What are some of the partnerships that you try to encourage them to have to find their qualified candidates?
Yeah, so we actually started kind of researching what our role should be as an agency in the workforce development space. We have a number of community colleges, a university, number of other nonprofit agencies that are doing similar work right around workforce development. So in the beginning of the year, I kind of set out on this like expedition to figure out what is the role that we need to play. And what I learned was there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but they often don't talk to each other. And sometimes there's restrictions, which I just learned on programming, where certain participants can't participate in another program with another college's participants, even though it's not funded by the same funding stream, which is something I ran into in my discussions with some folks. And I started to realize there's like this ecosystem that exists, but it's very difficult to tap into unless you're like acutely aware of what's happening.
Mhm.
So one thing we're doing is October 11th, we're going to have Hire Southland in partnership with South Suburban College. It's going to be a simultaneous hiring event, but also a panel discussion with workforce professionals from Cook County, the state, and a number of agencies, right? So that we can have both practitioners in one place, but also job seekers and vendors. So folks like Ford have come on board to be vendors, ComEd, Nicor Gas, and then some of our own clients to be actual vendors, right? To talk about what they're doing, and hiring and stuff like that, right? So we got a mix of our business clients, but also some major corporations, but it took a lot of months to figure out like, all right, where are these people, where are they, and things like that. So I would say for us, it's been about learning what's available and then communicating that to our small businesses, but then trying to get them involved in the process at the same time, right? And it's going to take more higher Southland type of things to happen. It could be virtual, it could be in person, but I think it's just convening people together so that everyone kind of is in the loop about what everybody's doing. And what I learned was there's phenomenal programs, phenomenal stuff out there. It just takes someone to let someone else know about it.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as small businesses grow and evolve, there's always a need for upskilling the current talent that they have to keep up with demand and industry trends. So, Roberta, starting with you, what are some resources that service providers need to kind of keep at the top of their mind to help small businesses upskill their workforce affordably? And then, how have you seen apprenticeships help?
Well, I'm going to start with apprenticeships. That's our big push in Kansas right now is to create more apprenticeship programs and to create opportunities for youth apprenticeship, whether that's a full-on youth apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship opportunity. The truth of the matter is college debt is real, and this younger workforce they're looking for ways to skill up and to gain the education that they need in order to be effective in the workplace, and they're turning more and more to registered apprenticeship programs, and a lot of the industries that have successfully carried on registered apprenticeships for years has always been in the trades, and of course the trades are heavily impacted by the retirement rates, right? And so they're gearing up, they're hiring as well, they're looking for individuals that want to make a great income, that don't want to go into college debt, that want to have a lifelong career opportunity. And so registered apprenticeships, if you're a small company, and we're working with a very small employer right now, he needs to hire 2 people. That's it. And he's got 4 employees total. And we talked to him about creating a registered apprenticeship, and he's like, sign me up. I'm ready. I need this. Because we have tax incentives. If you have a registered apprenticeship, there's a tax incentive, and the tax incentive per apprentice is exactly what he's investing of his own time to just grow his company and train his talent. So creating a registered apprenticeship, oftentimes it just mirrors what you're already doing to train that talent, and it mirrors what's going on in our economy right now, and it allows those employers to take advantage of other incentive training programs that are only through registered apprenticeship initiatives.
Thank you. Manny, so same question. What resources should kind of be kept at the top of the mind to help the small businesses upskill their workforce affordably?
Yeah, I would say for small business owners, if there's any small business owners on the call, tap into your local business support organization, whether it's your local community organization, chamber, something like that. You can also Google not-for-profit workforce development agencies, and you'll find something in your area. And it's for us as business support organizations, it's our job to talk to you, right? It's our job to make sure that if we have funds available, we exhaust those funds in helping you. So if you're a small business owner, please don't hesitate to reach out. For us as service providers, I think if you feel like you don't know enough about the subject, or if you are kind of not tapped into the subject, same thing. Reach out to your local agency. You might find that there's another agency in the area that's been doing this for years that you could learn from, and most of us are willing to talk to one another. That's why we're on this call. So I think it's just a matter of understanding, like, all right, what is the challenge in front of me? Can I just Google search anybody in my area that I can speak to and have a conversation? And usually what'll happen is if someone doesn't have the answer, they may know someone that doesn't, point you in that right direction, right? So I think it's important for us as service providers just to continuously stay involved with other agencies around us. And no, we're not always going to have all the answers, but try to find people we can collaborate that are already doing good work. And if someone is doing good work, try not to create programming just for the sake of doing it and trying to fundraise if someone else is already doing it. Just leverage someone that's already doing the good work and introduce your constituents to it.
I know here in Kansas City, we have an entrepreneurship uh, group that offers loans and grants with small businesses. So oftentimes those types of opportunities are in other communities as well. So if you're not sure that there's one in your local area, just Google it, see if you can find anything, because most small businesses are some sort of entrepreneurship.
One thing I would just like to add is the workforce boards generally provide they do provide tons of soft skills training. They do that with in-person services. They do that with software. There's a lot of career interest assessments, personality assessments, a lot of things that's going to test their typing skills. Like they run the gamut. So if you're going to engage with the workforce, you can access that and see what we're doing and see where the interest lies. One other thing I think I would say is, for upskilling, like, yes, the service providers can do it, but you all have the opportunity to do it if you utilize the services. So on the job training, like I said, you create the customized training that's happening, and then the boards would fund that for a certain amount of time. And there's another program called Work Experience or Transitional Jobs, and that is they're paid interns, but they're unpaid by you because the workforce boards are generally, or the providers are paying for that for 3 months, 6 months, 2 months, whatever the agreement is. And then with the intent, hopefully, that you would maintain them because the interns are doing such a great job. So a way to get people, on your workforce at no cost, you could invest in them, invest the time and training to be a great fit moving forward. But you can access that resource at no cost. All you need to do is engage with your local workforce board.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So the world of work has evolved, especially post-pandemic, making job quality increasingly important for job seekers. And we kind of spoke about this a little bit. We're even seeing initiatives like the Good Jobs Challenge being prioritized at the federal level. How can business service leaders support small businesses in really promoting diversity and inclusion and a more collaborative culture that attracts and retains top talent? And I'm gonna start with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing. I think one, understanding that with diversity, inclusion, and equity, it's doing that not only will help your organization, it's also good for a recruitment tool. You're going to get people engaged, with your organization, with your business, and I think that is going to be super important. I think promoting that and understanding that and getting practices around the country. So if you're a small business and maybe you haven't had to, open yourself up to bringing others in, or maybe it's a small amount. Strength isn't with numbers. Strength isn't with diverse opinions. Like I would view this in two ways. You can view this as, yes, we want to be a good employer. Yes, we want to be inclusive. I mean, it's the right thing to do. It's going to help you. But ultimately, I think of it too from a strategic standpoint, right? If you're going to think about the clients that you're going to be serving, the people in the communities, you want to represent, who you're going to be serving or what you're going to be doing. And I think that having that in mind when you're doing your hiring, when you're doing your training, you're organically building this whole platform for success because you're being inclusive. And I think that's what I've learned in the 14 years that I've been doing workforce development. I think a lot of successful employers have really been mindful about that.
Thank you. Manny?
Yeah, I think it's important, what Anthony just said is to think of the end user, right? Like you're not going to serve one person or one type of person all the time. You're going to serve people of different backgrounds. You're going to serve veterans. You're going to serve non-veterans. You're going to serve people of all kinds of backgrounds, right? And being able to surround yourself with diverse opinions, diverse thoughts is helpful in you creating your strategy to be successful because you're not going to know everything, right? And if you surround yourself with people that are just like you, you're kind of in this echo chamber, right? You're saying the same thing to one another all the time. So being able to expand, being able to tap into different talent pools, just broaden everything that you're doing, it's super helpful. And in what we do, right, as service providers, our clients come from all walks of life, right? We serve businesses that want to learn how to make mama's recipe a real business because they're making cookies and they're trying to formalize that. And we've got 8-figure manufacturers and everything in between. And the one constant is that those that succeed tend to look for information from people that don't necessarily look like them or come from the same background as them, right? They're understanding what really is their market. And I think that you can't underestimate that enough is to understand that if you're going to sell a product in the market or if you're a service provider and you're going to serve your market, make sure that you understand that you're not going to serve just one type of person. And if you can do that, you open yourself up to more opportunities.
Absolutely.
I tell our small businesses they're in a much better spot than some of the larger employers when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Because they're in a smaller environment, they can create that sense of belonging that they can't get at a large corporate place. When you walk in and they say, "Hey, is your kid doing better? How's your mom doing?" You feel like you belong. And small industries, when they tap into truly building out their culture for diversity, inclusion, and belonging, they can really diversify not only their workforce, but again, their customer base, because Gen Z buyers out there in the world, they're paying attention to what companies are doing. They want to know, what is this company doing to help our economy and our nation, and
Yeah.
what are you doing to be responsible, right?
Yeah.
And so focusing in on that is one way to really truly serve your community. I call it being a community health partner. If you're a small company and you're focused in on diversity hiring talent pools that have had difficulty or have um, been overlooked in the past, you're going to find loyal talent. And the truth is, a resume only shows where the job seeker has been. It doesn't show what their personal growth goals are, and it doesn't tell the employer on a piece of paper how dedicated they are going to be to that job. And I know some people say, well, if they've stayed at the job for 2 or 3 more years, they're going to likely stay. And the truth of the matter is, no, they stay where the culture and the environment is welcoming and they feel like they belong. That's all that resume tells you, is that that company had a half decent culture. That's it. So if you really want to focus in, and what that good jobs challenge means is it means that you start looking at diverse pockets of talent that have been overlooked. That may be talent that has been incarcerated, and they have a background. What would that look like to a small employer to hire individuals who have a background? They may be able to set up a very, very accommodating culture where a larger corporation could not. And so that gives them that extra push and that extra access. And we all know that there are some very loyal, innovative workers that come out of that system. So, I first and foremost, I tell people don't necessarily think that the resume is going to tell you that they're going to be a great employee. You have really got to look at what is that person's initiative for growth? What do they want to bring to the table?
Sure.
I think some advice just for small businesses is just be open to feedback. I think that's super important in this process.
Absolutely. So we do have a question that before we make it down to our last couple of questions that we have. And so Anthony, we have someone in the chat that is asking about the work experience when the name of that. So if you can just expand just a little bit more on how they get into that.
Program. So the program is called a lot of different things, but the best thing to do, and I'll get into that, is contact a local workforce board, but they'll call it WEX, WEX. They'll call it workforce experience. They'll call it transitional jobs. And these are, it's paid work experience from participants that are in the workforce system that get placed at sites where, if you're an employer, be placed at your employment, your employer, your site of employment. And then the whole point is you go into an agreement with them, and you could take them for how long the agreement's going to be. And it varies by state and local board, how long they do it, how much they get paid, all of that gets worked out. And obviously the whole intent, because the workforce system has interest in keeping people employed and so they can provide for themselves and their families. That's the whole goal. But it's a good program. And I can think of, in my experience, hundreds, maybe thousands of employers that have used this service. Is pretty popular, but it's not popular if you don't know that it's there, right? So those that know, access it though, for sure. Yeah. And like I said, transitional jobs or work experience. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, in Kansas, we call it work experience. But the key thing there is that it is always the job seeker that qualifies for the work experience and not the employer. The employer is providing the opportunity. And of course, their incentive to provide that opportunity is a lot of times that salary is either being subsidized at 50% for an agreed amount of time, or if it's a work experience where it's a temporary work experience, the workforce board is paying for that. And again, the employer is providing the opportunity for experience, meaning I get to put that experience on my resume. So it is a wonderful opportunity when it's a good match for the job seeker and the employer. But definitely reach out to your workforce board to see what's available in your area.
Thank you so much. So can you all share any success stories locally or nationally of small businesses that have turned workforce challenges into opportunities? And I want to start with you, Manny, because you have some great experience that you're down there in Chicago doing with small businesses.
Yeah, so there's two things that jump out at me. One is working with entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs that are looking at entrepreneurship as a viable workforce option, right? Like viable employment. We, in my time with the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, we had vendors popping up outside, but it was going to get colder. The pandemic was happening. They needed a place to start popping up inside. So we took a rundown laundromat with some city funding, and we were able to turn that into a business incubator. We started a small loan fund, and we were able to get 3 of the women-owned businesses there into their own brick and mortar spaces, and now they're thriving on Division Street, which, if anybody's familiar with the area, it's a really hot area now, and they're running hospitality businesses, right? They're running restaurants and other things like that, which are difficult, but through that effort, they were able to do that. The second thing that comes to mind that's more recent is a colleague of mine, Harry Holtz. He leads our Metals Hub program, which is a consortium of metals manufacturers. And he was able to stand up an internship program that spanned 3 high schools and was able to get 10 high school juniors and seniors real hands-on paid internships for 8 weeks. And after the 8 weeks, 8 of them received job offers. But this wasn't your typical internship of just kind of hanging out and hanging around and, not really doing much. They were welding, they were designing parts, they were doing all kinds of cool activities, and they got real hands-on experience. And in my opinion, that solves two challenges. Is one, people not being able to find steady employment, but having a skill and wanting to turn that into something that can be a job for themselves, which is the path to entrepreneurship. And then getting high school students, some exposure to some, like we talked about earlier, right? Some manufacturing jobs. Not everyone wants to go to college. Not everyone wants to take out student loan debt. And some people out of necessity need to start working sooner than later. So I think those two are examples of how we help the entrepreneur, but also how we help the next generation workers.
Absolutely. Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples. I'll name one just as a provider because we talked about hospitality. I in my time in New York City running workforce contracts, we've opened over 100 small business restaurants. And thinking about that, there's huge challenges if you're trying to break ground in a competitive landscape like New York City. Accessing the workforce system, we provided interview space, we provided candidates, we provided job postings, screening services, space for training when the build out of the restaurants was happening. All of that was going to happen. Food handler's license was something that they wanted in New York City. So we were paying for that for the people that are getting hired. All of that was helpful towards successful launches in various restaurants across the 5 boroughs. But the one that is close to my heart is one in Harlem, Harlem Jazz Enterprises restaurant, which really, really great and awesome spot. We hired like 45 people to start up this brand new young chef, his new restaurant. And I know he's gone on to do bigger things than that, and now has a whole restaurant group. So that sticks with me because I saw him when he was a little kid, he was starting out, and now he has like 5 or 6 restaurants across the city. So
awesome.
That's
Roberta?
So I'm going to go back to registered apprenticeship as my example. During the pandemic, I got a lot of phone calls from employers. How do we get people to apply, right? And I got a phone call one afternoon from a chimney company, and they were really challenged to find candidates. They had no one applying to their roles, no one in their pipeline, and they had openings they needed to fill. And regardless of what was going on in the world, people still needed their chimneys cleaned. So we started talking about it because I've been like, you don't go to college to become a chimney sweep. Like, where do you teach this? Where do you learn this skill set? Well, you learn it on the job. So we structured a registered apprenticeship program. They had one kicked off within 3 weeks' time, and it's been 2 years now that their registered apprenticeship has been up and going and fully active. And so for a company that really struggled to find quality candidates, by just having a registered apprenticeship program, they now get over 100 applicants a week. Wow. And they're higher quality of candidates. And so this is a small mom and pop company. They realized in order to be successful, they have to train their talent. And they realized that early on because there's nowhere else to go to learn this industry other than doing it on the job. Mm-hmm. And so I think as more and more employers kind of turn and look to see, like, just because you're small doesn't mean you can't be mighty. And so when they talk about the quality of the talent that they're turning out, and I used them to clean my chimney. And they sent me, prior to them coming out, a text message with the picture of the individual that was going to be cleaning my chimney. And it was their employee, their very first apprentice. That was his idea. And so when you talk about diversity and how that can really add to the company and build out new ideas and be innovative, just by creating this registered apprenticeship program, hiring a more diverse workforce, they started to offer services that no one else around them do. So I watched that company just completely turn on a dime by doing a registered apprenticeship.
Thank you so much. Those are all great successes to hear, the impact that's being made. Do you all have any final words of advice that you want to kind of share with the audience today, and final parting words?
Yeah, maybe I'll kick us off. For me, coming into workforce, like with a heavy background in like small business development work and not necessarily in workforce, right? And just spending pretty much the whole bulk of this year learning what's out here. Just go in with an open mind and be a learner and just ask people for their time, a little bit of their time, right? 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and just ask them, what are you doing? What do what do you have available? Because more often than not, people need to get these resources off their books, right? They need to spend down these funds. There's ARPA money that people still have left over. And people need to find ways to be creative in how they use these funds. And if you're a service provider, you can be a partner, or you can have an additional service to offer your folks that you're serving. If you're a business owner, you can find some great programs like the one that Roberta mentioned, and it's all going to be up to you to ask. So I would just say if you're kind of like, I don't know where to start, do a quick Google search or a Chat GPT search and find 10 places in your area you send an email to, and someone's going to reach out to you.
Thank you, Manny. Roberta?
I say you need to focus in on what your company values are and what's your vision and mission statement, and build true employee programs around that. There's a lot of push right now on employee wellness, and that really truly includes salary, benefits, time off, and the day-to-day culture within the company. And if you're wanting to really grow and build your company, focus in on what your values are.
Thank you.
And I think for me, it's kind of like what Emmanuel said. Just know that you're not alone. There are tons of resources. Just like slowing down, taking the time to Google it. Like it may seem, wow, there's so many and it's overwhelming. Like just dive in, and you're gonna unlock something, and it's going to help your business. There's no way that if you don't access what we're talking about, it won't help you in some way. So if you're looking for it, you're not alone. And we have people here that's their career is to help small businesses. So I'm really glad, if you're watching this, that you're able to take something away from this.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you all so much again for participating in this panel, and really sharing your knowledge around the work that you all are doing to assist and support small businesses. And I know all of the small businesses that you all are engaging with are truly appreciative of all that you are offering to them. And again, thank you. And that is it. And they just shared out my name and my email in case anyone has any follow-up information that they're needing or wanting to make any connections. And so again, I appreciate you all for joining us today. And that is it. You all have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.